What is mansplaining anyway? I'm here to explain a few of the differences between having unsolicited advice given to you, which I think is critical in the trades, versus something we like to call mansplaining. And you might be comforted to know that it's all about intent. Mansplaining refers to explaining something to someone in a condescending or patronizing or dismissive way, usually assuming that the listener knows less than she does simply because she's a woman. Mansplaining is about power and presumption, where advice is about respect and trying to be helpful to someone. It's not about the gender of the speaker alone, it's about the assumed presumption of superiority and the lack of respect, and the lack of changing how you are communicating with someone when evidence is presented in front of you. Some of the classic features of mansplaining include the speaker assuming authority or expertise without first checking to see if the listener understands or is familiar with the subject at all. And oftentimes the tone suggests that the listener couldn't possibly understand, even if this topic were explained to them or presented to them. Oftentimes the listener's credentials and experience are dismissed or minimized or ignored completely. And again, the intent isn't to be helpful. The intent is to maintain a hierarchy, being in a one-up position, being right. Mansplaining is about being right, and usually there's a bit of a power dynamic there they're trying to maintain or establish. It's to assert competence and control the narrative. If a woman engineer is a lead on a project and she starts talking to a colleague who doesn't know who she is, and he starts explaining the intricacies of torque to her, and she's like, actually, I'm the lead on this project. Or he never checks before explaining something rudimentary to someone who brings up clearly something that she knows about. Unsolicited advice is simply just that. It's just advice that was given to someone by someone without having been asked for. And it can happen to everybody of every walk of life. So men are already familiar with it. I'll get to that. Advice isn't inherently sexist or condescending if it's offered with respect and already acknowledges the previous knowledge of the person being spoken to. It's genuinely motivated by helpfulness, not ego. And sometimes if it can be easily dismissed, that is not mansplaining either. Like, hey, I noticed you're doing this thing. You know what might work better for you? And I say, no, actually, I got this. And then you walk away. That's not mansplaining. That was like, well, try to help. That's friendly and deferential and assumes that the other person might have some knowledge. It can get dicey in the trades because we have perception in fields, in the technical fields like mechanic, welder, engineering. We look at how each other look. Am I wearing steel-toed boots and FR, work shirts? How do my hands look? Am I talking with my hands, and what kind of vocabulary am I using? There are all sorts of artifacts that I have on me right now because I am in the shop that make me present as someone who might know something about the trades. And so someone is going to speak to me a little bit differently than if I were wearing, what's that called? Casual chic. Or if I were dressed like an administrative assistant, or if I were going to go into a teaching job, like the way teachers usually dress. You might not automatically assume that I know how to weld. And so you might start over-explaining to me just simply because, well, what are the chances that a woman would know how to weld? And that's just what we normally do. We calibrate each other all the time. We call it heuristics. It's like our best guess with people, but you're supposed to update it. And you're supposed to let people update it too. That's called being gracious. When someone makes a mistake with you and you're like, no, it's cool, I get it. Again, as long as it's from a genuine place. I tell you, it's the weirdest thing because I usually dress like this. I've always dressed like a tomboy. And when people break out that customer service voice with me when I dress like a girl, it is the oddest thing. But that wouldn't be necessarily malicious sexism. That's just miscalibration, that context-based social shorthand that we use. We humans constantly adjust how we speak based on perceived shared backgrounds. I argue that it's not mansplaining if the person doesn't automatically immediately know your background and they automatically adjust their speech and how they're dealing with you when they kind of sense that you're on the same page with them with the technical topic, and they readily adapt upward. Like I said, if you didn't know, it's not mansplaining. It's just like a miscalibration of what you thought that person was. If you would like to know some of my red flags for when I think somebody is mansplaining to me, when someone immediately hears my credentials and then just kind of dismisses them or minimizes them or ignores them altogether in little ways, or sometimes this one is the one I get a lot and I think people need to work on. It's the only one that bugs me, and I finally am starting to put a reason and a definition on why it bothers me, is when people are impressed by me, because everyone likes to feel special, and I do want to pump myself up for being a female welder because there aren't a whole lot of us in the trades, but there are becoming more and more of us in the trades. We are not unicorns anymore. We are fairly common, and so that's what I mean when I say I'm over my own novelty. I've had enough of people saying, wow, you weld? Really? You weld? Unless I'm in a ball gown, it's not that unbelievable. Treats my experience as surprising rather than something that could be normal. So in those cases, it's less about misreading me based on my outfit and more not updating your assumptions, even when the evidence is put in front of you. And that's where gender bias starts to show. Of course, women in the trades aren't the only ones who experience this sort of dumbing down, mansplaining. People of color, disabled people. Sometimes you see someone who isn't physically the same as you and you automatically assume that they don't have going on upstairs what you might have. Attractive people tend to be seen as less smart, less knowledgeable. Young people, there's a modicum, there's a little bit of truth to that because you haven't been around And so you have a lot to learn, but that doesn't mean you're inherently dumber and unable to understand things just because you're young. There are a lot of smart young people. Also old people. Some of us really like to listen to old people. I think old people have a lot to teach us, but also, a lot of people don't listen to what old people have to say. Quiet people, like polite, soft-spoken people, maybe they're just waiting their turn to talk. Maybe they don't have ADHD and maybe they are just, that's the way they communicate. Doesn't mean they know any less. Also people with accents. A lot of the times, if someone doesn't sound like someone from around here, well, maybe they don't know as much as me because they're not from around here. All in all, in these situations, is the assumption, the speaker is assuming the listener's competence before any evidence exists. And then when evidence is presented to them, they don't pivot and change and adjust their speech. They fail to update their assumption about that person even when shown evidence. And we blue collar workers get it too. How many times have you, looked like this and you've gone into a situation where there were not blue collar workers there, and then you say something that like really impressed them with what you knew? That's smart splaining, I think. And I think every man has experienced that, whether it was when he was a young man or a new hire. When someone new comes into the shop, it doesn't matter how old or seasoned they are. If they are a new hire in a shop, they're gonna, be talked down to. And so I feel like the nice guys that I run into, most of the nice guys, the good guys on my channel and I run into in real life, they understand how that feels, and so they might be a little bit hypersensitive to speaking to someone like me who might misconstrue helpful, friendly advice to that hierarchy I was talking about. Anyway, that's the difference between mansplaining and explaining when it hasn't been asked for. So congratulations, you have been Anne-Splained. Sorry, I promise it's not arrogance, it's just unregulated flow of trivia.